Kris here with another quick tip for you all. In this video, we're going to continue our look at playing with contrast paints. In this video, we are going to work on a Beast of Nurgle. He's been primed in Wraith Bone spray primer. You can see here we're going to use Nazdrag Yellow first. Now with this series, and this is going to be kind of a series as we work our way around this model, and so stay tuned for future episodes of working on this model. And as you can see, I'm basically just working with the Nazdrag Yellow. I'm not applying it terribly heavy, and I'm just laying a fairly heavy helping it down and begin moving it around. And as you can see, some of the areas I laid down a little bit more and kind of get a deeper brown out towards the edges of the belly section there. Next, I'm going to use Plaguebearer Flesh. We're going to use this in a normal kind of fashion. We're going to slap this right onto the model and allow it to do its thing as we work our way around. You can see I'm applying it somewhat heavily, allowing it to pool up in recesses while still remaining quite bright on the larger, flatter areas. Well, flat, it's not really the right term, but... And so you can see we're just basically working our way around and applying this in a pretty typical fashion. Set that aside, allow it to dry, and then we're going to come in with another color. We're going to use Creed Camo. Basically what we're going to do here is we are going to begin deepening the green. So you can see I have laid a bit of the Creed or Camo down, and I use another brush and I begin feathering out the color. Simply lay another layer a bit down and begin feathering that out. This usually works with another damp brush that's pretty clean, and you just lay a heavy helping down and then use the other brush to simply wipe the excess away and push the color up towards you where you want the color to build. I do have many other videos on the feathering technique, so if you're curious a bit more of an in-depth explanation of it, check those ones out. And as you can see, we're simply just working our way around here. I'm just building up a bit more depth in where that little fold is on him. He's kind of a big slug-like, and so I don't know what those little things are on the sides are, those little spiky bits. I don't know what those are, but we are basically just going to kind of follow around his body, as it were. You can see here we're simply applying more of the green in towards the belly, deepening that color and giving us more contrast and color depth in those areas, and allowing a bit more of the color to play and blend so that the belly doesn't feel too stark of a brown and a yellow. And as we move more towards greens, it makes it just feel a bit more like a warm kind of green. We're going to use some more of that Creed Camo on his fingertips and his hand just to create a little bit more color depth and variation on his skin. Again, trying to keep it interesting. Next, we're going to go with some Dark Angels Green. Again, we're going to push the color even further. So you can see up on the shoulder where we have darker green appearing, we're going to lay this down, and again, we are going to feather it out. So again, I'm using basically my shade brush to apply the color, and then I'm using another brush, slightly damp. You can see there's a bit of water on the surface there, and not too much water, but a fairly healthy amount of water in that brush will help with this process. As you can see, it kind of really dilutes, and as you move the color around, it really does start to feel a bit like watercolor for any of those out there that have played with watercolor before. So it's kind of a similar kind of thing. We're allowing the paint to kind of do its thing as we work our way around. Here on the fingertips, I'm just building up a bit more of the color out towards the tips of his fingers, applying a little bit more green just to get a little bit more color depth on that shoulder. Here I'm just pushing it in towards some of the folds and such, just building a bit more color depth and variation on that skin. Once that's dry, we're going to come in with some Wraith Bone. Now, basically what we're going to do here is we're going to reestablish some of those high points. The contrast, does a great job of allowing the high points to remain quite bright, but we want to push them just a little bit brighter. And again, I do want to change up a bit of what is happening on the model, and I do want to establish some more high points and some brighter areas. So again, I'm concentrating a lot on the belly and just really kind of going around and hitting the texture and such. And so you can see I'm pretty much applying this almost over the entirety of the flesh and other such areas. And again, it really kind of pulls all the color back down. We're going to come back in with Plaguebearer again, and we're basically just going to retint all of the surface. Well, we're going over the yellow areas as well, and as you can see, when we hit the belly again with the Plague Bear, it changes that overall value. It doesn't feel quite as warm yellow anymore. It's starting to feel a bit more of a green side of things. And as we move it around on the flesh again, and again, we're not allowing it to build up too heavily on the surface of the flesh. Again, we've already well established the shadow points and everything like that. Once it's dry, we're going to come back in with some Wraith Bone. You could probably skip this step. I was using contrast medium here, and I was just going to reestablish some more of those bright points around the edges of like where his those little tooth things. I don't know what those are, but basically we're just going to mix this into the Wraith Bone, and then we're just going to reestablish some of the highlights here and high points. And the intention here was just to kind of really build it up, but I think we may come back later on and kind of build some of these areas up with color just to get a little bit more brightness. You can see I'm kind of following some of the high points on the fold. On the face here, I do want to bring out some more of the brighter points on the face because, again, with the face is, the viewer's eye is immediately drawn to that, so you kind of want to concentrate on those areas. I'm also building up a little more color on the pustules and all those other areas, but otherwise, it wasn't entirely necessary. If you were a little bit more careful in your dry brushing, you probably could have just planned for that, really, because I'm going to come back in with the Plague Bear and then just reestablish it over the high points here, and it just gives us a little bit brightness, and you can see it does give us another variation on the color. But again, I don't think it was necessary at this point, but I'm just kind of playing around here with the color and just building up layers here and just having fun with all the depth that you can get with this stuff. Next, we're going to use Cygor Brown. And basically what we're going to do here is we are going to deepen up some of the edges. I begin by starting to apply some spots on some areas. Basically, I'm applying spots where the tentacles are kind of beginning, and also on the tops of the shoulders and just kind of interesting areas like that, and I just build up little spots around the areas. Then I use it around the edges of the belly and basically where the green and the yellow kind of meet, and I'm just basically feathering that out as well, again increasing the amount of contrast in those areas, again just to create a little bit more visual interest. And I also hit those little spiky things that are sticking out from his sides with a bit more, and you can see again we push that brown to all over the place, again just deepening the color and giving us more variation on the tones overall. I also hit the top of the shoulder here, and I just kind of feather that out as well, because again it kind of gives us that impression that there's this tonal shift where the spots are. And so I also want to have a bit more brown where the tentacles are beginning, because again, when we get to the tentacles, I do have a sort of idea where I want to go with that. But again, this is really about the journey, and we're just kind of playing around with the contrast. Here you can see there was just a little bit of a tide mark that I wasn't happy with, so I just take the damp brush and I basically just begin, moving that back a bit. But otherwise, that is the flesh. This was, not terribly quick laying these colors down, but it is kind of fun, and it also gives you lots of color variation and really how much layers we've laid down. It's really not a whole lot on the model surface. Those details are still nice and crisp, but that is it. Stay tuned for the next one.